It was a cool spring morning on Coruscant. Maul and Yoda had just finished a 4-hour training session. Master Yoda, the training you have given has helped me considerably. Good Padawan you are. Thank you, Master. Ready for a test of knighthood you will be. Maul thinks about what it would mean to him to become a Jedi Knight. The past 13 years have been some of the best years of his short life, being able to train under Master Yoda. Yoda, Maul. Mace Windu's voice comes over the comm links interrupting their conversation. The both of you are needed up in the council room. Go we must. Training finished. Up in the council room, they enter to find Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan standing before the council. They are talking about an urgent mission that they must make on Naboo. The mission consists of them talking with the Trade Federation to remove the blockade on Naboo. Maul thinks about how he would love to go on this mission, to apply and show what he has learned. He was just about to ask permission when Yoda says, Maul, go you will. Stay I must. Master, are you sure? Maul replied. Sure, I am, Yoda says. Without a second thought, Maul rushes out to prepare for the journey ahead of him. Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Maul set out for Naboo that same afternoon, but this was his first with another Jedi. He was excited to be on this mission with Obi-Wan since they had trained together as younglings. He also couldn't wait to learn more from Master Qui-Gon. After traveling in hyperspace for a few moments, they exited and their destination came into view. They asked the Trade Federation to board their ship and begin negotiations on behalf of the Chancellor.
Captain.
Yes, sir.
Tell them we wish to board at once.
With all due respect, the ambassadors for the Supreme Chancellor wish to board immediately.
Yes, of course.
The Trade Federation agreed, so the three of them landed on the ship.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Qui-Gon mentions that he can't sense anything. Obi-Wan says that it has to do with something else and not this mission. Qui-Gon tells him to keep his concentration on the here and now of the mission. My master said to be mindful of the future, Maul interjects.
Be mindful of the living force, young Padawan.
Yes, Master.
We have been waiting a long time for something, as simple as a trade dispute, Maul mentions. A sense of lot of fear, Qui-Gon remarks. Obi-Wan is about to make a comment when they hear a loud explosion in the room there and starts filling up with dioxis gas. All three of them instinctively hold their breath and wait for the doors to open. They see the battle droids ready to enter the room to check for life. Maul, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan jump out and cut down all of the droids in their path. We have to get to the surface of Naboo. I feel great danger. Agreed. We must go and find the Queen of Naboo. I fear for her life, Qui-Gon remarks. They reach the surface of Naboo to find the Queen and her party being escorted by droids. They decide to surprise the droids from above and launch an attack. They dispatch of the droids very easily and take the Queen to a secure location. Are you alright, milady? Maul asks. I'm alright, says Padme.
We're ambassadors for the Supreme Chancellor. Your negotiations seem to have failed, Ambassador.
The negotiations never took place.
We need to get you out of here, Obi-Wan mentions. My Padawan is right.
Your Highness, under the circumstances, I suggest you come to Coruscant with us.
Thank you, Ambassador, but my place is with my people.
They will kill you if you stay.
Then we must go, so I can plead our case to the Senate, says Padme. There's a ship over there that we can take. Let's go, says Maul. The three Jedi and Padme and her pilots board the ship and begin to make their journey to Coruscant. Just as they leave the atmosphere, they are met by the blockade and they begin firing upon their ship. They barely make it through the blockade, but notice that there was a leak in the hyperdrive and that it won't make it to Coruscant. We need somewhere to repair the ship, says Qui-Gon. I feel a great presence and pull that we need to go here, to Tatooine, mentions Maul. I don't like this place already, says Obi-Wan. Be patient, Padawan. Maul was correct about coming here. Can you feel that presence? Replies Qui-Gon. Yes, Master. It's a strong presence. However, I don't like being in hut space with the Queen, adds Obi-Wan. This is the way we need to go. There's a town just over the ridge, Maul remarked after scouting ahead. They start to make their way to Mos Espa to look for some parts and to repair the ship. Once they get into town, they all begin to sense a big disturbance in the force coming from the nearest repair shop. They enter the shop and Qui-Gon begins talking with the vendor.
I need parts for a J-type 327 Nubian.
Ah, yes! Nubian! We have lots of that.
My droid has a
While Qui-Gon is talking with Watto, Maul can sense the Force is telling him that they are there for the boy that comes out of the room in the back. He looks at the boy talking with Padme and he wonders what is so special about this child. Maul decides that he needs to find out why they were led to this child, and after some discussion and negotiation, Qui-Gon comes back and lets Maul and Anakin know that they have the parts they need and that he's actually negotiated and won a wager for the boy. They all head back to Anakin's home after talking with Qui-Gon about what he has done.
Mom, I'm home!
After some time with the boy and his mother, Qui-Gon decides to check this boy's midichlorian count.
Obi-Wan,
Yes, Master.
I need an analysis of this blood sample I'm sending you.
Wait a minute.
I need a midichlorian count.
The reading is off the chart. Over 20,000.
This boy's M count is higher than Master Yoda's, Qui-Gon tells Maul. This must be why we were led here, replies Maul. We have to take this boy back to Coruscant with us, Obi-Wan adds. You're right, the Jedi Council needs to know about this, says Qui-Gon. Just as they are about to leave, out of nowhere a cloaked figure with a crimson red blade attacks the Jedi and the boy. They barely make it out and flee to Coruscant. And on their way to Coruscant, Qui-Gon can't help but recognize a strong resemblance to someone he knew. In the Jedi Temple Council room, Qui-Gon recounts his encounter with the Sith and what he has found with the boy.
He was trained in the Jedi arts. My only conclusion can be that it was a Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
Ah, hard to see the dark side is.
With your permission, my master, I have encountered a divergence in the Force.
A virgins, you say?
Located around a person?
A boy. His cells have the highest concentration of midichlorians I have seen in a life form. It is possible he was conceived by the midichlorians.
Master, what did they say? Asks Maul. They said that they want to meet with Anakin to make a decision, answers Qui-Gon. So he will be a Jedi then? Asks Maul. He will be a Jedi, replies Qui-Gon. With the Council having met with Anakin and needing to think about the decision, they tell Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Maul to take the Queen to Naboo and finish the mission that they have started. Once they had gotten the Queen back to Naboo, and the battle ensued that we all know about, the Sith that had attacked them on Tatooine distracted Qui-Gon, Maul, and Obi-Wan, drawing their attention to him on Naboo. They chased after him, and in the chase, Maul and Obi-Wan get separated from Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon, now alone, faces the Sith and realizes that it is Count Dooku, the master that he had known so long ago and that he had trained under. Stunned, he can't believe that his master would betray the Jedi Order. After some valiant fighting and some back and forth between Qui-Gon and Count Dooku, Obi-Wan and Maul catch up to them and try to join in on the fight. Dooku, now seeing that the Padawan that he once loved and trained has now a new Padawan of his own, and another Jedi with him, thrusts his saber into the chest of Qui-Gon, killing him. Obi-Wan and Maul can't believe what they had just seen. Obi-Wan starts to fight Dooku while Maul rushes over to Qui-Gon. Master, hang in there, pleads Maul. Maul, you need to make sure that the boy gets training, says Qui-Gon with his dying breath. I will, Master, Maul answers. With Maul now frustrated, he joins Obi-Wan in the fight with Count Dooku, and they are close to winning and beating Dooku when he retreats and flees the planet. With no way to track him down, they find Anakin and head back to Coruscant with the war now over. Maul still can't believe that a Jedi as powerful as Qui-Gon could be defeated by a Sith. However, it wasn't just any Sith. The Sith was Count Dooku, the exact man that trained Master Qui-Gon Jinn. This sent Maul into a downward spiral with his head reeling. Anger, hatred, and contempt started to creep into his mind and body. He could feel something changing within himself. He was afraid of what was happening, but that didn't matter because it felt so good. Is this the dark side? Maul thought to himself. Maul could feel the power surging inside him. He knew that the Jedi feared the dark side and where it could lead you. Although, being here in this moment, his fear began to fade as he could feel his body getting stronger with the Force. This power feels so good. It will help me get revenge for Master Qui-Gon. With that thought now in Maul's head, he was ready to give in completely. However, there was one thing that was holding him back. Master, are you alright? Suddenly, Maul was thrust back into reality by 4 simple words. Anakin was the one thing that was keeping Maul tethered to reality and to the light side. Maul wasn't above getting revenge. At least he wasn't anymore due to recent events. One thing remained the same for him though. He wasn't about to go back on his word that he gave Qui-Gon, and that he would make sure the boy got the training he needs. I'm fine, Anakin. Go back to your seat. Anakin, with reluctance, knew that something was wrong and that a change was happening. However, he did as he was told. Besides, they would soon be at Coruscant, and then his training would begin, and then he could do what he has always wanted. Being a Jedi and being able to protect those that couldn't protect themselves is all that he wants. The ship snaps out of hyperspace as Coruscant comes into view. It wouldn't be long now till Maul would have to break the news to Yoda about the Padawan that he had once trained. Maul grabs Anakin and they leave the ship with Obi-Wan, only to find Yoda waiting for the 3 of them on the platform. Yoda motions for Maul to follow him. Yoda leads Maul to the Jedi Council room. Maul had been there before, but this time it was different. It felt darker and more cold than it has in the past. He didn't know if this was because it was only Master Yoda and him there, or something else at work. Surround you, darkness does, Yoda said, breaking the silence, realizing Maul was uneasy. Know about Dooku, I do. I must do something to avenge Qui-Gon. Very alluring the dark side is. Follow it, you must not. Of all the people, Master, I thought you would understand. Qui-Gon was basically your Padawan, after all. He was, yes. Train him well, I did. Sadness, his death brings me, it does. Anger, hatred, revenge, it does not. That comment caught Maul off guard, but he understood what Yoda was saying. He knew that forming attachments and letting them govern your life was something that he couldn't afford to do, especially at this time when he made a promise to Qui-Gon he couldn't afford to lose himself. Maul began to feel more at ease and could feel the dark side residing within him. This talk with his master had helped him a lot, but the thought of being enticed and still feeling the darkness within worried him. Nonetheless, he wouldn't let this stop him on his journey. Master, I have one request. I must train the boy. Let me fulfill my promise and train him. Train him, you will. Thanks, Master. Jedi Knight trial passed, you did. Jedi Knight, you are. With that statement, Maul knew that it would be his sole responsibility to train Anakin. He left the council room filled with renewed determination to fulfill his duty as a Jedi. Still, he couldn't help but feel a tinge of dread. After all, why would this be any different? He couldn't help Master Qui-Gon when it mattered most. Why would he expect to be able to help Anakin? These thoughts made the dread and darkness surge and rise within him like a balloon about to pop. At that moment, there was only one thing on his mind. He had to find Anakin so that they could prepare and train for what was to come. Maul found Anakin down a long corridor leading to the Jedi archives. He was talking with Obi-Wan. Master, Obi-Wan was telling me that you're going to train me, and Master Yoda won't finish his training. That is correct, Anakin. I will train you. Your training will be difficult, but it will ultimately prepare you and make you strong with the Force. You will be so strong that someday you will be able to take down the Sith. Master, what do you mean? He means that you are going to Sereno, Obi-Wan interjected. I will also be joining you on this quest. Obi-Wan is right, Anakin. We must train so that we can go to Sereno. After all, we will need to be strong when we go after Count Dooku. Anakin, wake up! We need to get going. What's wrong, Master? Did he find us? Not yet, but we have to hurry. I can sense that he's near, which means he can feel us too. It was nearly 3 in the morning when Maul and Anakin had time to rest. However, they didn't get to rest for long, till they had to be on the move again. Master, what will he do when he finds us? I don't know, Anakin. I don't want to stick around to find out. He's gotten a lot stronger. I fear that he'll kill us. It has been 7 years since Qui-Gon had died, and Obi-Wan, Maul, and Anakin began their journey to find Dooku and get revenge. Master, how did we get here? How did it end up like this? The Force is still a mystery in some ways. This is something that I have wondered myself. Maul couldn't help but wonder where they turned down the wrong path. He knew that his motivation 7 years ago wasn't a great one. No matter how much he swore that they were looking to get revenge for the right reasons, it just wasn't. Yes, they were hunting down a Sith, and they thought that it was a justified reason for them to get revenge. In thinking about how they got here, along with the intentions of why they went on this journey, one thing came back to his recollection. It was right about the time when they were getting ready to embark on their journey of training to prepare for their fight with Dooku. It was a memory of conversation Maul had with his master. After all, we need to be strong when we go after Count Dooku. Alright, let's get training then, Master. Maul could see the determination in Anakin's eyes. He knew that determination came from Anakin's sense of justice, and this was a feeling he knew all too well. He was grateful that Anakin had such determination, but he had to make sure that he was leading Anakin down the right path. After all, he made a promise to Qui-Gon that he would train Anakin. He also knows that if he were to lead Anakin down the wrong path or fail him in any way in his training, he won't just be letting down Anakin. He would also be letting down Qui-Gon, and in return he would let down his own master. He couldn't do this because he asked Master Yoda to let him train Anakin to complete his promise to Qui-Gon. Maul had to seek counsel on this subject, so he decided to go talk to Master Yoda. Yoda was right where Maul had left him in the Jedi Council room. Master, I have something to ask you. About the boy it is, yes? Yes, Master. I'm concerned that I may be leading Anakin down the wrong path. Be careful, you must. Help the boy this journey will. Clear your path is. Fear for yourself, do not. Who should I fear for, Master? Know that I do not. So much darkness there is. Thanks, Master. After talking with his master, the fear, concern, and worry about this journey they were going to take didn't subside. One thing was clear, however. He didn't have to worry about himself. So who did he have to worry for? Could this person derail the journey? Could this journey put Anakin at risk somehow? All of these questions were filling his head. Still, the thought of what Yoda had said about his path being clear and this journey helping Anakin was enough to keep him moving forward with this plan. Although the thought of someone being in his path that could ruin things or make it worse was unsettling, Maul got back to where Anakin and Obi-Wan were standing. Anakin, are you ready to leave? Yes, Master. I'm ready for my training. Obi-Wan, are you ready? Yoda gave you permission to come? It is all okay. I'm ready to get revenge for Master Qui-Gon. It's settled then. We'll leave in the morning. Master, he's getting close. Maul snapped back to reality. He was certain that this was the moment that things started to take a turn for the worse. Still, he did have trouble seeing why they were being hunted for the simple act that was made 7 years ago. I'm sorry, Anakin. I'm sorry for the path that I led you down. It's not your fault, Master. I don't blame you. I should have sensed that this would happen. How could you have foreseen this? I don't think anyone could. I know, Anakin, but it still was my duty to protect you. I should have put a stop to it long ago. He's close, Anakin. Keep watch. I'm a lot closer than you think, Maul. And yes, you should have put a stop to what you could have prevented those 5 years ago, commented Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anakin, run! Maul wanted to protect Anakin at all costs, so he sent Anakin on his own while he tended to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Maul thought about what Kenobi had said. He didn't know how he could have prevented what happened so long ago. He didn't have the time to worry about that. He told Anakin to escape, and now he had to deal with Kenobi. Maul pulled out his saber, and a lavender glow lit up Kenobi's face. Maul could see how hurt Kenobi was. He had a look in his eyes that told Maul he felt extreme pain and betrayal at what had happened. Suddenly, a blue light accompanied the purple hue that lit up the night sky. Kenobi raised his hands slowly into his sparring stance. Maul raised his saber and brought it into a defensive position across his chest. Maul didn't want to fight Kenobi. He only hoped to stall long enough so that Anakin could get away. Once Anakin was out of the way and safe, Maul could then try and get away himself. Maul kept staring at Kenobi. He was wondering what goal Kenobi would be trying to accomplish. Maul carefully weighed all of his options in his head. He thought about all of the outcomes of what was about to happen. Maul calculated that about 30% of the outcomes ended with Maul getting away. Maul knew how Kenobi fought and what he would do during battle. Maul was trained by Yoda and thanks to that knew about Kenobi's strength. Kenobi wasn't very strong or spectacular in the Force, but he excelled in defense. He could often turn his defense into offense and use it against his enemy. This is what had Maul worried about fighting Kenobi. Maul wouldn't have worried about this 7 years ago when they set out on this journey. However, it had been 5 years since he saw Kenobi fight, and this worried him. He didn't know how Kenobi could have changed his fighting style in the last 5 years. One thing was sure though, he couldn't let this fight last long enough for Kenobi to turn the tide against him. Maul didn't know how long Kenobi would let the tension build, for he was certain that Kenobi would not attack first. Suddenly Maul saw Kenobi's brow twitch and turn his foot from relaxed to a position that was ready to spring into action. Kenobi lunged at Maul. He came at Maul so quick that Maul hardly had the time to block what was coming at him. Kenobi jumped at Maul and brought his blade in an arcing attack over his head at Maul. Bringing his saber up towards his face and slightly above his head, Maul parried the attack. Maul force-pushed Kenobi away and sent him skidding to a halt about 25 feet away from him. Now they were looking at each other, waiting for the next move. The only sound to be heard was the dirt shuffling by in the breeze. Maul quickly scanned his surroundings. They were in a clearing with a river that bordered a forest to his back. In the north there was a small hill that led to a cliff that was about 300 yards away. His options were slim. He had to get some cover and buy more time to form a plan. He could try and retreat to better cover in the forest, which was only 100 yards away. Still, there wasn't a guarantee that he could make it fully intact with Kenobi on his heels. His last two options didn't provide much hope, but one was better than the other. Maul could press the attack towards the cliff, hoping to catch Kenobi off guard enough to beat him. The other option was to hold his guard for as long as he could, hoping that Anakin would return to aid him. Maul didn't see that last as an option, given the fact that he told Anakin to get out of there. Still, he wasn't one for following orders. There was only one viable option left for Maul. He had only hoped that Kenobi disliked the idea as much as he did. "Don't try it," barked Kenobi. "I have no choice," answered Maul. Just like that, Maul made the decision to attack and drive Kenobi away as far as he could. All he had to do was attack as hard as he could in hopes to make ground towards the cliff. Maul began to sprint at Kenobi. Kenobi, in response to seeing Maul come racing towards him at full speed, began to hurl boulders through the force. Maul cut down the boulders left and right, slowing his pace to a jog. It wasn't enough to stop his attack. In one final push, Maul lunged at Kenobi, again unleashing a barrage of attacks upon him. Kenobi parried left, right, down, left, right, up, left, down, right, and up again. Kenobi was barely breaking a sweat. After all, this is where he excelled in combat. But Maul's plan was working as he began to drive Kenobi backwards one step at a time. Maul kept up the relentless attack with hopes to wear him down. They were now 200 yards from the cliff. Maul's goal was in sight, and just as he was about to increase the intensity, Kenobi caught on and pushed Maul back using the Force. Maul came to a sliding stop upon his back about 15 yards down the hill. Maul sat up on his shoulders in the dirt. He saw Kenobi advancing. He did a kick-up, landing on his feet. Maul could feel his energy beginning to drain with that maneuver. Kenobi, who was still coming towards him, barely looked to be breathing heavy. Maul readied himself to go on the defensive to catch some needed rest. Suddenly, a 7-foot-sized piece of trunk came whizzing past Maul's head. It came so close to him that he could feel the wind on his ear as it passed by. Maul watched it head towards Kenobi. Kenobi caught the trunk in midair using the Force and dropped it to his left, 6 feet away. "Master!" yelled Anakin in the distance. Maul recognized the voice, but he hoped that it wasn't Anakin. He hoped that this time, and this time alone, was the time that Anakin followed orders. Maul spun around on his heels to find Anakin standing on a halved tree about 25 feet in the air. The look on Anakin's face gave the impression that he knew he was late to the party, but that he was there to rescue Maul. Maul watched as Anakin descended the tree, crossed the river, and met up with him on the other side. Maul quickly questioned Anakin as to why he was there. He also stated that he told Anakin to leave and that he needed to follow orders. "I know, Master, but I couldn't let you have all the fun," remarked Anakin. Whatever the case, Maul was glad to see Anakin. Even though he would never admit it to himself, he did need Anakin's help to drive Kenobi back. The distraction that Anakin provided gave Maul enough time to catch his breath for another round. He knew that Kenobi had gotten stronger, but he didn't know how strong he actually was till now. Kenobi could rival Master Windu and maybe even Yoda. They were the only two to push Maul as hard as he was being pushed right now. Maul wiped his brow, adjusted his shoulders, shook out his arms, and readied his saber. He glanced over to Anakin, who was now standing next to him. They had trained long and hard for a moment like this, only they had hoped that the first time they would have to use what they learned would be when they met Dooku for the second time. They weren't happy with how they had to fight against Kenobi, but it didn't matter anymore. He stood in their way of safety, resolution, and retribution for what had happened those few years ago. Anakin returned the look as if to say that he understood what they had to do. They had to attack as quickly as they could and for as long as it took to knock Kenobi down or force him to retreat. The two of them took off like runners from the starting block. They met Kenobi just over 200 yards from the cliff. They began to unleash all of the attacks they could muster upon him. They slashed at Kenobi to his left and right. They began to flip over one another while attacking Kenobi in an attempt to overwhelm him. Kenobi, in his best attempt to defend the attacks, found himself blocking in a half circle from left to right, but still being driven back towards the cliff. They were now 50 yards from the edge. Kenobi, noticing that the edge was coming closer, glanced back briefly to gauge the distance. Maul noticed Kenobi glance back and knew this was their chance to end the fight. He looked towards Anakin, who was already looking back. Maul motioned what they needed to do. Together they both summoned all of their strength and force-pushed Kenobi. The force was so strong that it sent Kenobi flying back, toppling end over end towards the cliff. Kenobi was now 10 feet from the cliff and still flying backwards. Just as he was about to sail over the cliff, he ignited his saber, catching the last few feet before the edge. It slowed him down, but wasn't enough to keep him from going over. All that was left was a red-hot line in the earth where Kenobi's saber had struck and stabbed the ground. Maul and Anakin ran up to the cliff edge to see what was left of Kenobi. They watched as Kenobi was now a third of the way down the mountainside, with his saber slowing his descent. Maul was finally able to catch his breath. He didn't want to fight Kenobi, but he was glad that Anakin was there. This proved to be a good test for them as they prepared to face Dooku again. The two of them made their way back to the ship in silence. Just as they crossed over the river and entered into the forest, Anakin broke the silence. He began to ask Maul what they could have done differently, so that it didn't have to be this way. Maul thought the same thing himself. It was 5 years ago when the three of them confronted Dooku for the first time. They had been preparing for 2 long, grueling years to get ready. Kenobi had been growing a little impatient as he thought that they were ready. Maul, on the other hand, knew that Anakin needed more time. Maul was able to convince Kenobi to give Anakin more time to grow. Kenobi had agreed, but still left on his own to go face Dooku. He left in the dead of night, and by the time Maul found out, it was morning. In somewhat of a panic, he woke Anakin and relayed what had happened. They came to the decision that they must go after Kenobi and help him. They arrived on Sereno at Dooku's palace, hoping that they weren't too late to help Kenobi. They found the ship that Kenobi had used, and it was still warm. They rushed inside only to be greeted by the sounds of lightsabers clashing against one another. They entered the Great Hall to find Kenobi fighting Dooku one-on-one. Entering the room created the distraction that Dooku needed. Kenobi took his eyes off Dooku for a split second to look over at Maul and Anakin. Dooku capitalized on this mistake and took advantage of the situation. He slashed at Kenobi, catching him at the knee, severing his left leg, and then slashed at his midsection as he did to Qui-Gon. Dooku then threw Kenobi against the wall, letting his body hit with a hard thump and fall to the floor, seemingly lifeless. Anakin roared out in anger to see his friend lying on the ground, dismembered and lifeless. He rushed in with all his anger, only to get zapped by Dooku's lightning and get sent flying back, landing at Maul's feet. Maul stared at Dooku, who was daring him to try and attack. Maul knew that he had to do right by Anakin and protect him at all costs. He picked Anakin up off the cold stone floor and rushed back to their ship so they could escape while they were still able. Maul was back in the forest with Anakin again. Perhaps if he had done a better job at preparing Anakin, it would have ended different. Anakin, sensing Maul's thoughts, mentioned that he was grateful for what he did those years ago and that it wasn't his fault. "We thought he was dead," marked Anakin. "You did nothing wrong." "Still, we could have gone back for him, fought with him, or we could have gone with him in the first place," Maul answered. "We couldn't have known. You did what you had to." "Look what that got us," replied Maul. "Dooku was strong and turned Obi-Wan against us. We will get him back and defeat Dooku together." Maul was grateful for Anakin's decisiveness. He was right after all. They would bring Kenobi back to the light if it was the last thing they did.